Master your emotions, don't let them control you. How many times have you said something in a fit of anger, only to wish you could take it back moments later? How many times have you sent a message, made a decision in a burst of emotion, only to pay the price with regret, loss, or even the collapse of a relationship? That doesn't mean you're weak. It means you don't yet understand how emotions really work. When you're angry, afraid, or overly excited, you're handing control over to the primitive part of your brain, the part that only knows how to react, not think. Science calls this an amygdala hijack, a coup inside your brain, where reason is shut down in seconds, and you become a slave to your own emotions. What's worse, every time you explode, you're training your brain to react even faster next time. This isn't just a one-time mistake, it's a destructive loop that can ruin your career, your relationships, and even your self-respect. But here's the truth that should give you relief: emotions are not the enemy, they're just signals. The problem isn't the emotion itself, but how you respond to it. And the great news? You can take control. The Stoics knew this 2,000 years ago. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Today, I'm going to show you the real mechanism for controlling your emotions, not by suppressing them, but by mastering them. If you want to stay calm no matter the situation, stay until the end. This could be the turning point in how you live and respond to the world. Emotions weren't created to destroy your life. In fact, they're an ancient survival mechanism. When our ancestors faced predators, a surge of adrenaline and cortisol, the stress hormones, helped them run faster or fight harder. The problem is, in the modern world, where threats are no longer tigers in the jungle but deadlines, demanding bosses, or a sarcastic remark, the brain still reacts the same way. It switches on the fight or flight mode. This is when the amygdala, the brain's emotional control center, takes over. Psychologist Daniel Goleman calls this phenomenon an amygdala hijack, a coup inside the brain. When it happens, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for reasoning, analysis, and decision-making, is temporarily shut down. You lose the ability to think clearly and become a puppet of instinct. Picture this: you receive an email criticizing your work. Instead of reading it carefully, thinking, and responding professionally, you immediately type a furious reply, hit send, and 10 minutes later, you wish you could turn back time. That's amygdala hijack in action. What's dangerous is that every time you react impulsively like this, you're not just making a momentary mistake, you're reinforcing a neural loop. Research by Dr. Joseph Ledoux, New York University, shows that repeated emotional reactions create neural superhighways in the brain, making control harder over time. The more impulsive you are, the easier it becomes to be impulsive again. On the other hand, every time you pause, observe, and respond consciously, you're retraining your brain, building new neural connections that allow reason to prevail. In other words, emotional mastery is not innate, it's a skill you can train. The Stoics understood this thousands of years ago, even without MRI machines or modern scientific terms. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you perceive it." This isn't just a nice quote, it's the foundation of modern cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. Therapists today teach us that emotions are the product of thoughts, not objective events. A criticism doesn't have the power to hurt you, unless you allow it, through the way you interpret it. For example, someone says to you, "Your work is terrible." If you think, "They're right, I'm useless," you'll drown in anger or shame. But if you think, "That's just their opinion, and I get to choose how to respond," your emotional state will be completely different. Neuroscientists confirm, the brain doesn't distinguish between reality and your thoughts about reality. The meaning you assign to an event determines how your body reacts. That's why controlling your thoughts is the first step to controlling your emotions. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and Stoic philosopher, reminded himself every day, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is especially crucial today, when we live in an environment of constant stimulation, social media, news, work. Emotional traps are everywhere, a negative comment, an urgent email, a traffic jam. If you don't create a cognitive gap between stimulus and response, you'll become a slave to your environment. Science and Stoic philosophy converge on one truth: self-control doesn't come from controlling the world, but from controlling your mind. Anger, fear, envy, they're all just signals. The problem isn't the emotion, it's how you process the signal. Remember this: emotions are like ocean waves. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. And this ability starts with understanding the mechanics of emotion, the amygdala, the neural loops, and the truth that thoughts create feelings. Once you understand this, you'll stop saying, "I can't control my anger," and start saying, "I'm learning to control my thoughts." And that is the true power of a free human being, the power Stoicism always spoke of. Freedom isn't doing whatever you want, it's not being ruled by what you don't want. 3 principles to master your emotions. Understanding the mechanism of emotions is the first step. But to turn knowledge into real power, you need a simple system of action. No complicated methods, no need to become a meditation master, just practical steps you can use the moment emotions surge. The Stoics believe true freedom isn't about doing whatever you want, but about not being controlled by your emotions. To achieve that, here are the 3 golden principles. Principle 1, the golden gap. What happens in those first few seconds when you feel angry, anxious, or afraid? Your brain gets hijacked by the amygdala. Everything you say or do in those 3 to 5 seconds is almost 90% driven by emotion. Psychologist Viktor Frankl, author of Man's Search for Meaning, said this timeless line: Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That's the golden gap, those precious few seconds that decide whether you'll be controlled or in control. How to practice. When emotions rise, don't react immediately, whether it's replying to an email, responding to a comment, or clapping back on social media. Count silently, 1, 2, 3, or take a deep breath. This simple act allows signals from the amygdala to return to your prefrontal cortex, the part that handles rational thinking. Real-life example. You're in a meeting. Someone harshly criticizes your idea. Normally, you'd snap, "What do you even know?" But this time, you pause for 3 seconds, take a breath, and instead say, "I'd like to understand better. Can you explain what you mean?" You avoid a heated clash and turn a tense moment into a professional dialogue. Stoic message, Marcus Aurelius wrote. You will find peace as soon as you stop arguing about things beyond your control. The golden gap brings you back to the one thing you can control, your response. Principle 2, name it to tame it. A famous UCLA study found, when you label your emotion, for example, "I'm angry," amygdala activity decreases while the prefrontal cortex regains control. A tiny act, yet it's like flipping the reason switch in your brain. Why does it work? When you identify the emotion, you turn it from a vague feeling into something you can observe. You're no longer the anger, you're experiencing anger. You and the emotion are not the same. How to practice. When emotions surge, don't speak yet. Instead, silently say, or write, "I'm angry. I'm anxious." If possible, add an intensity score. I'm angry at level 7 out of 10. This shifts your brain from reaction mode to observation mode, exactly what the Stoics advised. Treat emotions as passing phenomena, not your essence. Real-life example. A client sends a scathing email about your work. Instead of firing back, you read it and whisper, "This is anger. I see it." That single sentence is enough to ground you before you reply. Stoic message, Epictetus said. When an impression arises, say, "Wait a moment. Let me see what you are and where you come from." Naming the emotion is the first step to examine it, and decide if it deserves action. Principle 3, the value check. Every emotion calls for action. Anger says, strike back. Fear says, run away. But before obeying, ask, does this action serve my values, or just my reaction? The Stoics called this value examination, a filter that separates what truly matters from emotional noise. How to practice. Before reacting, ask yourself, what's my bigger goal? To stay calm and professional, or to win this argument? If the action doesn't serve your values, stop. Replace it with one that does. Real-life example. You're arguing with your partner over something trivial. Emotions push you to dig up old mistakes just to win. But you pause and ask, is my goal to keep this relationship strong or to prove I'm right? The answer is clear. So instead of attacking, you choose to listen. The fight cools, and the relationship stays intact. Stoic message, Marcus Aurelius wrote. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. The value check turns this wisdom into practical action. Why do these three principles work? They rest on three pillars. Neuroscience. Pausing and labeling emotions directly influence the amygdala-prefrontal cortex dynamic. Stoic philosophy. Focus on what you control, your thoughts and actions, not external chaos. Practicality. You can apply them in meetings, text messages, or any daily conflict. Remember, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. These three principles are your surfboard, helping you ride out emotional storms without being dragged under. The 3-second battle. Imagine this, you're sitting in an important meeting. The atmosphere is tense but professional. You present an idea you've been preparing for an entire week, and then, from the far end of the table, a voice breaks the silence. Interesting idea. But honestly, who would be naive enough to believe that? The room goes quiet for a few seconds. A bitter smile appears on your colleague's face. A few eyes glance at you, waiting to see your reaction. And what do you feel? Your body heats up. Your heart pounds. A powerful wave surges through your chest, anger. Your brain fires a signal, fight back. Show them they've crossed the line. A sharp comeback sits on the tip of your tongue. What do you even know to talk like that? This is the moment where most people fall into the emotional trap. But this time, you remember the three principles. You pause for 3 seconds. 3 seconds that seem trivial, yet they are the border between chaos and calm, between slavery and freedom. In that instant, you take a deep breath. The emotional wave is still there, but you're not swept away. You name the emotion, this is anger. One simple phrase, yet it shifts you from victim to observer. Then you ask yourself, what's my goal here? To win a petty exchange, or to keep my professionalism and authority? The answer is clear. You choose silence. You lift your head and smile. You look straight at your colleague, calm, neither challenging nor avoiding, and then you return to the main topic, continuing as if their comment never touched you. What happens next? Your colleague looks momentarily unsettled, expecting a fiery reaction, and getting nothing but composure. Others in the room see you differently, not because you stayed silent, but because you controlled yourself when someone else couldn't control theirs. The result? The meeting moves on. Your idea is still taken seriously. And more importantly, you walk out of that room with a victory, not over someone else, but over yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Conquering yourself is the greatest victory." And that's what you just did. You didn't let a sarcastic remark destroy your peace. You didn't allow emotion to pull your strings. You became the captain of your ship, right in the middle of a storm. But here's what matters even more: this moment didn't just save a meeting, it's training a habit. Every time you apply the 3 principles, the golden gap, name it to tame it, value check, you create a new neural pathway in your brain. A path that leads to self-control, calmness, and inner freedom. Because, in the end, life isn't short on provocative colleagues, harsh comments, or situations that ignite you. You can't erase them. But you can choose how to respond. And that choice defines who you are. Next time you face a similar challenge, whether in an argument, a harsh client email, or a rude comment online, remember this story. Remember that true power doesn't come from the fastest comeback, but from the best self-control. Remember this unchanging truth: anger never solves a problem. It only creates a new one, losing control of yourself. How many times in your life have you paid the price for a reckless word? How many doors of opportunity have closed because of one impulsive act? And how many relationships have fractured simply because you wanted to win for a few seconds in an argument? Marcus Aurelius, an emperor who ruled an entire vast empire, reminded himself every day of the power of calm. He wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. For I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone." This statement carries immense inner strength. It tells us that controlling your emotions is not weakness, it is the ultimate power. A true leader is not the one who shouts the loudest in the boardroom, but the one who stays clear-headed when everyone else is losing their composure. In today's world, everything pushes us to react instantly: phone notifications, negative comments on social media, workplace pressure, social expectations. This culture makes impulsive reactions seem normal. But pause and ask yourself, do you really want to live as a puppet pulled by other people's emotions? Controlling emotions doesn't mean suppressing them or pretending you don't feel anything. It means acknowledging the emotion, but not letting it dictate your actions. It means guarding the doorway to your reactions, and only opening it when your response aligns with your values, your goals, and your highest self. Silence can sometimes be the most powerful response. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you know when to speak and when to stay silent. Angry people say whatever crosses their mind. Wise people say only what matters, and at the right time. Here's what you must engrave in your mind. The greatest freedom is not external freedom, but inner freedom, the freedom not to be ruled by emotions. When you achieve this, you become an unshakable fortress in life's storms. So starting today, practice. Don't wait until anger strikes to figure out how to cope. Prepare ahead. Heavy checkmark. Remember the golden gap, 3 seconds to reclaim your power. Heavy checkmark. Name the emotion, so it becomes an object, not your master. Heavy checkmark. Shift your focus back to your values, and act in the right direction. Next time someone mocks you, or life challenges you, remember this. No one can make you angry without your consent. Because controlling your emotions doesn't make you weak, it makes you so strong that nothing can shake you. Start today. Because the greatest battle you'll ever fight is the battle within yourself. Don't just listen and move on. Knowledge only becomes power when you act on it, starting today. Next time anger strikes, when your heart races and your head burns, remember these 3 principles. Pause, name it, shift your focus. 3 small steps, but they create an enormous distance between you and an irreversible mistake. Don't let temporary emotions destroy long-term values. Don't hand over power to anger. Take back control of your own mind. And when you practice this the first time, it might feel hard. But the second, the third, you'll witness something incredible. You'll become calmer, clearer, stronger. Not because the world is less chaotic, but because you've become the driver, no longer the victim. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. That power is in your hands. Start now."